The Marlins just got back from a 5-game road trip in Atlanta and Cleveland, heading for a 10-game homestand. Check out all the highlights and stuff that we have to say about the homestand. How did Giancarlo Stanton fare in the homestand?
All that and more coming up next.
Welcome to Down the Right Field Line with Marlins Nation. Let's head it off first with the Rockies. Game 1, you had Mark Buehrle versus Jamie Moyer. The Marlins have had some success in the past with Jamie Moyer. The Marlins were trailing early on. Mark Buehrle allowed 4 runs in the first, and the Marlins managed to crawl back, and Buehrle pitched a great game, solid. And there was one instance where it was Giancarlo Stanton versus Jamie Moyer, and it was a hell of a battle, and it ended with a gigantic, enormous grand slam. My goodness, was it a blast. I mean, it was just great to see, and that's it. Jamie Moyer was out of the game. Buehrle lasted into the 8th inning, and Heath Bell, he came in for the save. 1, 2, 3, and the Marlins took that game 5-3. Moving on to game 2 was Ricky Nolasco versus Juan Nicasio. Ricky was going for the franchise record for most wins by a Marlin. He's reaching for win number 69, and it started off slow again. The Marlins trailed 3-0. And the Marlins chipped here, chipped there, and it came down to Ricky Nolasco with a full count, 2 outs, 2 runners on. He hits a ball in the gap and brings in 2 runs to take a 5-3 lead. Ricky just took control, going 6 innings, allowing the 8 hits and the 4 runs, but he struck out 6 batters, and I thought that was important. And he now stands as the most winningest Marlin with 69 wins, passing Dontrelle Willis. So congrats to Ricky Nolasco. It's amazing. You know, it's one of those unsung hero type of things where you never expected Ricky Nolasco to be the #1 guy, but that's what you get for having the consistency that Ricky has had as a Marlin. Now moving on to game 3, you had Zambrano versus this guy White, Alex White, I believe his name is. And you thought, okay, sweep, right? Well, the Big Z, I mean, this time he didn't have his stuff. The Rockies actually scored 5 runs with 2 outs. Cargo with 2 runs, 2 RBIs in the 2-out situation. And you had Tulo with a monster 3-run shot. It's one of those things where Zambrano didn't have his stuff. Ended up giving up 7 runs in 5 innings. You know, it's one of those laughers that you say, you put it behind you and you move on, and you know, hey, 2 out of 3, out of the Rockies. And Rob, what did you like about this series in general?
Well, you know, going into that series that, although the Rockies haven't been performing to the level that they were thinking they were going to perform with all the preseason acquisitions, you knew that team was going to be dangerous. And for us to take the first 2 games out of that series was really important for the momentum. And, eventually the offense was going to catch up to them. In game 3, like you mentioned, Zambrano didn't have his stuff. And if he's not with the 2-seam fastball down in the zone, he's not going to be able to get outs. And you leave balls up in the zone, that team's going to be able to take care of them. With guys like Cargo and Helton on that team, you leave balls up, they're going to be able to take them. Overall, I thought the series, we saw a lot of offense. That home run, like you mentioned, Rafi, that home run by Stanton was probably the most exciting play of this year so far, just because everybody's on their feet, it's bases loaded, 3-2 count, you know that the next pitch something's going to happen, and he just hits a bomb, it breaks the scoreboard. Everybody was jumping out. You thought we won the World Series or something. It was just an amazing moment And Rafi, I know that you were at that game, and you were probably jumping off your seat when that thing happened.
Yeah, it was just incredible. One of the best games I've ever been to as a Marlin fan. We move on to the Giants series. You had a 4-game series. We actually swept the Giants in San Francisco early in May. And you know these guys got pitching. You got Lincecum, you got Kane, Vogelsong, you got Bumgarner, you got Zito. Luckily we didn't face Zito, I guess. But game 1, you had Sanchez versus Bumgarner. Sanchez came in against the Giants 3-0 with a .84 ERA career against the Giants. So, you know, you thought, hey, this is a great chance for the Marlins to continue going. And I was at that game, and I felt good about it. Stanton hit a ball in the 2nd inning that reached the Budweiser sign for a home run to give the Marlins a 1-0 lead. That was a laser shot to the Budweiser bar, and my goodness, gave the Marlins a 1-0 lead, but they couldn't hold it. In the 6th inning, Gregor Blanco tripled, and so you had a 4-run 6th inning. It seemed like things just unraveled, and that's exactly what happened as the Giants proceeded to score 9 runs off of Marlin relief pitching between Webb and Dunn and Cishek. So it was just one of those things. And the funny thing is the Giants can't score worth a darn, and they just went crazy on the Marlins. The Marlins tried to come back, ended up with 7 runs, and the Marlins lost 14-7. It's another one of those laughers, but it's kind of bad to lose 2 laughers in a row, but hey, you know what? It's 2 laughers, you move on. In game 2 of the series, you had JJ versus Lincecum. Now, these 2 guys have been struggling in their own right. When you relatively compare them to how they've been, they haven't been pitching that well. But in this game, I think it was no different. I mean, JJ was pretty solid in 5 innings, allowing 3 runs. And then Lincecum, you know, tried to do his thing, but he just couldn't do it. Also allowing a home run to Stanton. This guy has been money in May. Just tremendous. You had a situation where the Marlins scored 5 runs, including a 3-run shot by Coghlan. It was great to see Cogs come up in the clutch and knocked Lincecum right out of the ballgame, which is good to see because this guy is the freak, and he just had a freak performance, I guess. But it was just a great thing to see the Marlins knock this long-haired freak out of the game. So now you move on to game 3. And Rob, we were at that game. It was Mark Burley versus Madison Bumgarner. You had a battle of the lefties. And again, pitcher's duel. You had these 2 guys going until the Marlins scored 3 runs in the bottom of the 4th. 2 singles by Reyes and Infante, followed by a double steal, which was great to see that in motion. And then Hanley comes up with a clutch base hit to knock in Reyes. And then Stanton walks. They don't want any piece of Stanton, knowing that he's been crushing them this season. And then Lomo comes up with 3 men on. Actually, it was the bases loaded. And the Giants commit an error, and Infante and Hanley come around to score. Marlins take the lead. Heath Bell comes in for the save. And again, could not get it done. You had runners on base. You had a runner on 3rd base. I believe it was a couple runners on base. You had to bring Randy Choate in. And then struck out Gregor Blanco, which was another pumped up, you know, charged up ballpark, at Marlins Park. So Randy Choate comes up with the save in this game. And, you know, you didn't like what you saw out of Heath Bell, but it was good to see that the Marlins were able to prevail and get the save, get the out, get the win, most importantly. Now moving on to Sunday's game, you had Nolasco versus Kane. Now, off the bat, it's a pitcher's duel. I'm not expecting balls to fly out of the park. And Cabrera was just the story of the game. Later on in the game, Cabrera singles, Melky Cabrera singles, steals 2nd base, goes to 3rd on a ground out, and scores on a sac fly. So, Melky Cabrera 2, Marlins nothing, and the Marlins scratched out a run. Moving on, the following inning, guess who did it again? Cabrera singles, Buster Posey drives him in with a double. Now, that ball, in my opinion, should have been caught. Petey, for some odd reason, has been having trouble reading the ball in the outfield. He read the ball wrong, and he just didn't have a beat on it. The ball, he jumps up, he couldn't get it, and the run scores. The Marlins had a chance again. In fact, Reyes drove in another run to cut the lead 3-2, but the Marlins could not take advantage of any other opportunities and eventually lost the game 3-2. This was a series that had some good, had some bad. It is what it is because it was tied at 2, the series was, and a great played series. Rob, what did you think about that play that I mentioned with Peterson and the series overall?
Well, you know, this series, whenever you play a 4-game series, it's really, really hard to sweep a 4-game series. And on top of that, it's really hard to win a 4-game series just because it's such a long series that both teams have their opportunities to gain momentum. And if you think about it, even the playoffs, you never play 4 straight games in somebody else's park. So it's really hard to gain that momentum and to keep the momentum going. And losing the first game after losing the last game against the Rockies, right off the bat, the Marlins didn't have any momentum because now they're 2-game losing streak going into the second game of the series. But I really liked how they bounced back. Now going to that Peterson play, things like this are going to happen in this ballpark early on. The players aren't really familiar with all the gaps. Center field is really deep. If you guys haven't been to Marlins Park, you guys have to check it out because center field is really far away. And the only park I can maybe describe it to is maybe Arizona, because Arizona center field just looks like it's so far. Sun Life, it didn't feel like that. You had that Bermuda Triangle in left center, but it didn't really, center field didn't really feel that far. And Peterson, I think, just misjudged it. He thought it wasn't going to be that deep. And also in other ballparks, you take a few steps back and you're already at the wall, where in this ballpark you haven't even gotten to the warning track yet. So I think that all those calculations, and even in the next series against the Nationals, he had another play that was similar to that he couldn't track down. And that's, you know, Peterson's a good center fielder. And I think he's going to do a great job out there. It's just getting used to it. Going back to the series overall, I was glad to at least get a split. In a 4-game series, you want at least a split. There were a lot of good things that came out of it. And, you know, that momentum carried over to the National Series.
We have the Nats in first place. That's right, first place. We're coming in 3.5 back going into this series. So it was really important to at least take 2 out of 3, if not sweep. So we go into Game 1, Memorial Day, afternoon game. You had the Battle of the Z's, Zambrano versus Zimmerman. The Nationals take a 1-0 lead on a Jordan Zimmerman home run. That's right, the pitcher homers, and it was a 2-2 curveball by Zambrano. Questionable call on the pitch selection. Who knows? Maybe. Definitely he left it up, and Zimmerman just put a good swing. You know, it's one of those swing hard in case you hit it, and he hit it out. Nats take a 3-1 lead on a 2-run double by Marlin killer Ryan Zimmerman. So Marlins are down 3-1. And then later on in the game, Hanley gets on base. And who comes up? Giancarlo Stanton. And guess where this ball lands? It lands in the Clevelander. Marlins tied at 3. This place is going nuts again. This ballpark, let me tell you before we continue. This ballpark, the fans are in it every pitch, it seems like. Every pitch, every moment of the game. And man, it's good to be there. It's good to feel that energy. But anyway, Marlins tied at 3. Lomo doubles following the Stanton homer. Peterson singles. Buck strikes out. We'll get to him later. And then Cogs comes up and he hits a sac fly to left field and scores in Lomo, which was huge. Not only for him to go to left field where that's his thing. That's his thing. That's what he did in 2009. That's what won him Rookie of the Year, was just dumping that ball in the left field. This time it was caught, but fine. Sac fly, Marlins take the lead. And this time, the Bellinator gets it done. 1, 2, 3, including 2 strikeouts. Marlins take the victory. Now, 2.5 games out. Moving into Game 2. Sanchez versus Edwin Jackson. Now, you'd think pitcher's duel, maybe. It was. It was. These guys were throwing zeros. Sanchi had a no-hitter going. I mean, it was 4 innings of no-hit ball, something like that. But it looked like he had his stuff. I was at the game, and I swear the way that he was pitching, he was lights out. The same with Jackson. Jackson was doing his thing, getting outs. The Nationals actually score on a miscue by John Buck. Ian Desmond singles, and then steals second. Buck throws the ball into center field, and Ian Desmond gets to third base. So Corey Brown, rookie for the Nationals, squeezes in Desmond. The Nationals take a 1-0 lead. So Marlins down 1-0. And I'm thinking, oh man, this is a pitcher's duel. We got to scratch in some runs. We got to get Jackson out of the game. Giancarlo comes up clutch with an RBI double. It ties the game at 1. The most interesting man in baseball, Greg Dobbs, comes up. And previously, before this at bat, he was 4 for 4 in situations with a runner on third and less than 2 outs. And guess what? He gets the job done. He gets a sac fly, scores in Coghlan. And again, the Bellinator gets it done. Strikes out LaRoche, strikes out Ian Desmond, allows a double to Mr. Jonathan Solano, brother of Donovan Solano, and gets the final batter to fly out. And it was kind of like, because Stanton, it looked like he kind of lost it in the lights type of thing, but he caught it for the third out, and just another save for Heath Bell. Now moving on to Game 3, Marlins a chance to sweep, move to a half a game out of the Washington Nationals in the division, in the standings, and you had JJ versus Ching-Ming Wang. Right off the bat, the Marlins take the lead on a Stanton RBI single. So the Nats scored 2 runs in the 4th inning to take a 3-1 lead, And then the Marlins come back. They come back. Coghlan gets a sac fly to score in Lomo. And then JJ getting it done with a base hit to score in Peterson. This is huge because if you remember a couple of years ago, JJ was hitting the ball well, driving in runs on home runs and so on and so forth. So the Marlins take the lead on a John Buck single. And this is great news, guys, because like I kind of hinted earlier, John Buck has just been dismal this homestand, and maybe even in May. He hasn't been himself, and it was good to see him give the Marlins the lead. So the Marlins have a 4-3 lead later on in the game. Giancarlo Stanton, what does he do? You guessed it. He hits another home run. That is his 13th overall and his 12th of the month and his 30th RBI of the month, tying Miguel Cabrera for the team record that he set in 2006 for most RBIs in a month. And this guy, I believe he's been carrying this team, and he showed it again, giving a 5-3 lead. Now into the 9th inning, Heath Bell comes in, and you're thinking, all right, he's been good the last 2 outings. He's got this one. Well, he allows a leadoff double to Adam LaRoche. I'm thinking, you know what, 5-3 lead. If anything, we win 5-4. It's not a big deal. Bell breezes through the 9th inning and picks up his 10th save of the season, 3rd of the series, and the Marlins are half a game out of the National League East. What a month of May. What a homestand. Rob, this has been the best baseball the Marlins have played in their franchise, 21-8. Can you elaborate on this series and I think the homestand in general?
Well, this series was, we had the offense that was there, obviously, but the pitching was what got us over the top. And, we kept going back to Bell's situation. And we actually got a tweet during the week by Gustavo, and he asked us, what are the Marlins going to do about Heath Bell? And he really showed his stripes and really came out in this series by getting 3 saves. And in those 3 games, he looked like the Heath Bell of old. He was dominating. He was striking out guys. He wasn't walking a lot of guys. And, you really, when he came in, you felt comfortable with giving him the ball. The other thing was Hanley Ramirez. Hanley Ramirez, in this series, He batted 10 times. He got 8 hits. That's an 800 batting average. That's an incredible series for Hanley Ramirez. He was hitting the ball hard. He was finding the gaps. He was hitting home runs. The full package. And you even saw some exchanges with Reyes when they would call each other off and then they would like laugh about it. So these type of things are the things you want to see for a winning ball club. And like you mentioned, this is the best month of Marlins baseball in our history. They've never won this many games in a month. So a lot of positives, and you know, the fact that we finished the month by sweeping the Nationals was huge going into June, because June is probably going to be one of the hardest months of the entire year. We're facing a lot of first place teams, a lot of teams that have made the playoffs the past couple of years.
So be sure to check us out on Twitter, and be sure to check out MiamiMarlinsNation.com. That's the place to go to check out your Marlins fix. From all of us here at Down the Right Field Line, we'd like to leave you with our random video of the week, which we like to call
La Meja Breakout.
Later.